Okay, so I'm Michael Crump. I work at Telerik, and I am part of the developer relations team. And we are here today to talk about my favorite subject, which is building mobile apps on Visual Studio. So did anybody here attend the earlier workshop that I had on the first day? We see a couple people. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to cover some concepts that was in that as well. So just kind of a quick disclaimer for those that attended my workshop. Okay, so with building apps with Visual Studio, in the past, I know when I was big into Visual Studio, especially when it came to wanting to build mobile applications, I was hit with this. And all of you in the room as well, we're looking at, okay, if we wanted to build a mobile app, we were limited. You had to build a Windows Phone 7 application, or you had to build a Windows 8 application, and then eventually you were able to build a Windows Universal application. So that wasn't that great. And we all started looking, in a couple of years, some time has passed since Windows Universal, and there's more options. But we started having quite a bit of other players that was in the market. iOS, Android, and we started seeing Microsoft's messaging, especially some of the latest stuff that happened at Build about iOS and Android. And then we have another platform, just kidding, BlackBerry, nobody cares. Let me tell you, don't worry about that 1%. It's not going to get you anywhere. But we had really the iOS and Android. And then these two came around. I was lucky enough to get one of these Apple Watches, but then you also had the Moto 360. And wondering, how can I actually build for all of these platforms, even BlackBerry, which I'll make fun of them again, don't worry, before we get through with this. How can we hit all of these different types of devices? So this is where it led internally us to several questions, as well as myself. And I'm just going to list all the questions here very quickly. What were my best options for developing these mobile applications in Visual Studio? What about iOS without a Mac? This was a big one. So we see that with Xamarin, we were needing a build host, and we were looking at even Microsoft solution. We're still needing a Mac. Almost everywhere for iOS, we were needing a Mac. But we have a solution where you don't need a Mac as well for that, which is in the Telerik Platform. Then also, how am I going to develop these applications? I mean, we're inside of Visual Studio, so what about Swift? And what about Java? What about Objective-C? How can I do that? And then I want to develop for all of these things inside of my favorite IDE, and it's still my favorite personal IDE, even though I develop in Xcode as well as Android Studio. But Visual Studio is the best IDE ever. So how do I do this? Besides the questions, it led us to these options. And these are the options we're going to discuss today. Mobile web, hybrid apps, native apps, and then what I call cross-platform native apps. So if you've attended some of the native script talks, you kind of know what I'm talking about there with cross-platform native apps, but I'll go in detail as we go through these. Okay, so to kick things off with mobile web, there's a few pros there. Mobile web, when you're thinking of that, you're just really thinking of basically a web page. You have a web page that you just create, you've spun up, you put it somewhere. I don't know, maybe you throw it on your GitHub page or just anywhere. The great ability there is that you're able, to hit all of these multiple platforms. Pretty much any modern web browser, it'll work. You're using the web skills that you already have. Development cost I put here is low, and it is very low. Most people in the room, if I ask you to raise your hand, I would say probably 80% of you would say you're a web developer. So let's test that theory. How many people is a web developer here? Yeah, exactly. So and again, you can reuse user interface, core logic, and you don't have to care about Apple's strict restrictions on all of the app stores. You can do whatever you want to do. It's just a web URL you're going to give your customers. Then there comes the cons. The cons is basically limited APIs, which we all know. We know what HTML5 supports, what HTML5 doesn't support. Graphics, we've seen some games that people have written in just pure HTML5. Some of them have looked great. Most of them have looked kind of crappy. And then obviously just the capabilities of the browser. So we've hit very early versions of Android. And those versions of Android maybe have an older browser that don't support any of the new features. Or people still are carrying around Windows Phone 7s, and those devices, IE is not looking so hot. And then zero store discoverability, which is the biggest con in my opinion. Nobody can find your app. It's one of those things. They have to know a little bit about you before they're able to get to it. So this is kind of what I have seen, people kind of attacking this. This is, again, my experience with working from, hospitals to banking and financial and a couple of other places. They go to a new ASP.NET project, they select a template, empty, they hit that big old next button and a project spins up, and basically they're dependent 100% upon Bootstrap, which is fun. I mean, we use Bootstrap in some of our stuff as well. And so you get this. This is the page. I'm sure you've all seen this before. The default ASP.NET Web Forms page. And you resize it, and wow, you've got your hamburger icon here. And everything lines up, and it looks great. Thankfully, Bootstrap takes care of you there. The second way that I've seen the majority of developers that have been building this is this mobile optimized web pages. As you spin up a new web forms project, you automatically get default.aspx. So from here, if you just simply create a new form, you could name it default.mobile, and then it would automatically add the .aspx extension onto your application. And from there, in this example, I just wanted to be super cool and just add a header tag that says mobile browser, and then I wanted to use my favorite browser, which was IE, and show the emulation in Windows Phone 10, where it displays that. So basically, it's able to determine very quickly, which version are you using? Are they using the desktop version, or are they using the mobile version? And obviously, there's user agent strings, which I showed you back here. Yeah, right here. This user agent string that was able to determine which file is going to be rendered. So these are the two approaches that majority of people are using. We have a couple of our own, approaches. Obviously, we have Kendo UI Mobile that you can use. Then we have ASP.NET Ajax. It has a couple of controls designed there for responsive design. Then we get to hybrid apps. And hybrid apps is something that I've played with extensively, and I found that all of the web developers that are in this room would really be able to jump into this part of it pretty quick. So this, obviously, we have multiple platforms again, except for, I don't think there's any support for BlackBerry, but you can use, again, your web skills that you already have today, and again, development cost is low. Most of the people in this room are already web developers. Reusing store your user interface and core logic, and finally, store discoverability. Your app can be published into the marketplace. Some of the cons, and I put an asterisk by this one for performance, is remember everything in a hybrid app is run inside of a web view. So there is sometimes some performance issues there, and usually, there's some blog posts that have compared, the performance, issues between hybrid apps and some of these other various ways that you can build apps. But just keep in mind that there is something that you may want to look at when it comes in terms with performance. But also the native APIs. One thing, that I found is that you're really depending upon the community to build plugins. So does anybody here already use Cordova? Yeah, so those of you that use Cordova, you've already been kind of hit with that, where you've had to add in plugins. And I'm the same way as well. When I was trying to use Amazon Web Services or something like that, normally there's like SDKs that are provided if you're using native or whatever. With this, with Cordova applications, you're pretty much going to be finding a plugin, and we have a plugin marketplace that makes that easier for you. Moderate graphics here as well. This is going to bring us to Telerik AppBuilder. There's quite a bit of talk here at the conference about AppBuilder, And I was just going to show you some of the stuff that I found kind of cool with OutBuilder. So here's the main project templates. And there's a couple of templates here. There's a blank one that's just JavaScript, and this is the one that I actually am using for this demo that I'm about to show you. Then you can also use TypeScript. We know a lot of people in here, especially Visual Studio. Our .NET type of audience loves TypeScript. I do as well. So you can use those. And then we have a couple of templates. One's using Kendo UI, which is great. Everybody's played with Kendo UI at some point. Then there's a drawer. The drawer kind of gives you that hamburger icon. You can call it, they call it kind of now a side drawer. And you can slide from left to right, or you can make the animations appear from whichever side you would like. And the last one is a tab strip. So there's a tab strip down at the very bottom. And you've seen this in any iOS or really Android applications. Here is the structure of the side drawer. So everything here is familiar. For those in the back, don't worry. I know it's hard to see this from all the way back there because I was just back there watching the session. And so anyway, there is an app resources that contains images. There's a Kendo folder that you can see here. Obviously, there's TypeScript available. There's a script.js. We have some styling here. And then there's some views, which is a couple of views in your page. And then there's just plain Cordova. So that's just a sample project. We also have a built-in simulator that you can use as well. This simulator, you can switch between iPhone, Android, or Windows Phone.
Sorry, what is TypeScript?
Yeah, so for those of you that haven't used TypeScript, TypeScript is a Microsoft-based product. Microsoft released it, and it's an easier way. If you're wanting to get into JavaScript, you're not very familiar with JavaScript, you can start typing it. Go to typescript.org. It's completely open source. It's available for you, right now. Is anybody else using TypeScript currently? I see there. Yeah, I see in the back. All right. So, this was the simulator, built-in simulator that we have. I just told you about a couple of options there. You have iPhone, Android, Windows Phone. You can do other things like debugging and taking screenshots. So I wanted to get into a demo pretty quick, so I'm going through this pretty quick where I can show you a couple of different things. So let's look at our very first demo. So I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to make sure that my application is running. Okay, good. All right, so we're going to go to Visual Studio. And so what I was thinking might be kind of cool for this presentation is creating a OutBuilder application and then taking a picture of everybody here and showing you what it looks like live on my phone without it being provisioned for an iOS. It's like 99 bucks to get a developer license, plus it's hard to get the actual IPA file, which is what Apple generates onto the device. So I thought this may be cool, but first I wanted to walk through some of the content here. So if we take a look at the first scripts here, we have a Cordova.js. For those in the back, I'm going to zoom in just a tad bit where you can see this. We have Cordova.js, and then we have JS-index. So this is going to get us two script references. One's the Cordova that I'm going to zoom in on over here, and then here's the index.js. And from here we have a header, and then I've just added in two buttons, two simple buttons. I've added some styling here, but you don't have to worry about that. So we have a take photo, and then the second thing that I have here is select from a photo album. And then here I have just an image where after it takes that image, we're going to display that inside of the phone where you're able to see it. Check it out. And then I have just a little footer. And so if I look at the CSS, we have CSS here. This is just your standard CSS that you're already used to working with. Here I've got the button styled. But the JavaScript, which was in the index.js, if I expand that out, you'll see we added a document.add event listener, device ready. This is kind of standard boilerplate code to check to see if the device is ready. And so if it is ready, I can run this camera app equals new camera app, camera app.run, and hide the splash screen if I had one. And inside of this function, this is all Cordova. So you can add these event listeners. Obviously, you could use jQuery if you wanted, but I wanted to make this pretty simple and vanilla, and obviously something that you could take home and look at later. So I have this button that is wired up, and if you click on this button, then it's going to run this capture photo, and then I've got another one where I can actually navigate and get my photo from the album with any device. So it will go across my iPhone, it'll go across my Android, as well as my Windows Phone device. So taking a picture, there is some code that you have to add in to take that picture. And so I've just added in this, and honestly, this was just code that I found that people have been using over and over on how to take a picture. So it's just that dot underscore on photo data success dot apply, and it's passing in these arguments. Obviously, there's some vel, and you can set up the quality in a destination type. Get photo has get photo from album. Obviously, has a very simple thing here. It's just underscore get photo. So here's the get photo piece of it. And I know this is kind of a lot of code to kind of look at very quickly, but this is standard Cordova code, and all of this is documented very well. So we have the get photo, and then we have the own photo data success. So once it finishes this, it's just going to show us this captured photo. And here I've put it inside this small image.source. Again, on photo URI success, we're passing in that same image URI, and it's going to show that captured photo down at the bottom. Anytime it fails, and believe me, I've seen times that it fails, it just uses the pop-up alert message, and it tells you, hey, we've had a problem here. Okay, so what's cool about this is that you can kind of start working with this by just selecting build this inside of the simulator. So inside of the simulator, I'm just going to switch to iPhone, let's just go to iPhone 6 Plus. And so on the iPhone 6 Plus, this is the application. It's saying like, say cheese. But you'll notice, I'm trying to take a photo here. It's actually going out and saying, hey, I understand that you're trying to take a photo. So here, can you provide me an image? Okay, so what would be cool would be to actually run this application on my phone. So I'm going to take this same application, like I said, it's just one JavaScript file, and I'm going to select Build in Cloud. And I'm going to select iOS, and you may have seen from the keynote today, they talked about doing some of these builds. So I'm going to do an OutBuilder companion app, and I'm going to select Next. And so right now, what it is doing is taking that, this current project, it's building it, putting it up in the sky, and then it's bringing it back down up in the sky. And then it's bringing it back down, and we have a QR code. Yeah, it's awesome. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to launch. I'm going to launch my AirPlay, and I'm going to turn on mirroring. And you should see my iPhone screen. All right, so no, you won't see any weird apps or anything on my phone because I'm going to leave it right here on this same screen. So I'm going to go just to OutBuilder, and once I go to OutBuilder, you can see I actually practice my demos before I start them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a QR scanner, and before I select QR scanner, like here's like everybody, hey. All right, so I'm going to, it'd be pretty cool to actually just scan this barcode. So let's back up and see if, oops, that's not gonna work. There we go. All right, so I just scanned the one that was on the screen. So as you can see, what just happened was it downloaded the package, if you were watching the phone there. And so now it's gonna say take photo. And so I'm going to select the button to take photo. So you may notice that this is actually the this is the iOS when you're taking a photo. Those of you that have an iPhone have kind of seen this. So we'll take a kind of a nice group photo of everybody here. Yay! Say hello. Yay! I see some waving in the background. Great. All right. So I've taken a photo. And so all right, it's going to take just a second. Now I'm going to select Use Photo. I'm really not sure how well the wireless works. So, and yeah, so I made the image a little bit too small here, but I was just kind of playing around with this to see something, different type of demo that people maybe don't see so often. But this was actually accomplished in really a matter of maybe, I would probably say I spent about 30 minutes or so to put this piece of it together because it was just it's so easy. So that's great and all, but also selecting from the photo album. So I can select from the photo album. Hopefully I don't have anything too bad in here. No, nothing too bad. So let's see, last night I actually checked out Paul Revere's house. So I'm going to select that one, and here again I'm able to see that image. So this is the OutBuilder. This is a completely hybrid application. This is running on iPhone with no app deployment except for running the companion app. So I thought that was pretty cool. The same thing could be done if I was using Android, obviously, or Windows Phone as well. So I'm going to just take that and switch that back over to the screen. All right, let's look at some more things here. Let's go back to this, and I'm going to go to from my current slide here. All right, that was a quick look at hybrid applications. I know we'll probably have a lot of questions, and don't worry, I'm going to be around to take some of those questions, and we can hang out afterwards. All right, so let's talk about some more things that's coming up always in the mobile app development, and that's native apps. So native apps have a lot of power and capability, which you all are aware of. All the native APIs. So I was at Apple's conference last year. I was at Build, and at Apple's conference, iOS 8 shipped. Day one, I was able to start working with those APIs, which was great. And where everybody else, it was taking them some time. So for hybrid applications with Cordova, it took them some time, in order to get HealthKit functionality, added to that. But you have all the games that are built, like the Angry Birds types of applications. I actually met the team at Microsoft at a Windows Phone group, and they told me they went native all the way simply because they couldn't make their games work very well outside of native. They needed the speed, which is this third bullet point. And again, you have out distribution. There's two big cons, mainly the single platform. So pure native applications, what I'm talking about here, Java, your Swift, and just your C# applications. This is expensive when you start getting into just Objective-C or a Swift developer. Also, there's a very high development cost. That I found that when even the simplest of applications. So at the end of this, we're going to kind of talk about what's best for your team before you start making some decisions, because everybody's wanting to start building mobile apps now. With Microsoft, this was all that they had supported until about a month and a half, 2 months ago. So we had blank apps, which were universal apps. And then we had the Windows apps and Windows Phone apps. So the universal apps targeted both with a shared project. The Windows apps was obviously just for Windows 8, 8.1, and then finally with Windows Phone apps, it was just targeting Windows Phone. Wasn't very good. Microsoft knew, we got to change that. So they came up with what they called the Universal App Platform, and yet they renamed to the Universal Windows Platform. But you'll see that there's just these UAPs that's outside of this. And this kind of changes the game a tiny bit, because we had before this type of project where we had the Windows 8 project, 8.1, and then you had a shared project. Now all we have is this in the very latest thing. So we just simply have, a main page.xaml, and there's no shared project. And the thing about the new Universal App Platform, or Universal Windows Platform, is it targets all of these types of devices. So if you paid attention to all of the things that were happening, at Build, you'll notice that, devices and IoT is really becoming large. There's a session tomorrow that's on IoT. And then obviously you had to hit mobile, PC, Xbox, Surface, and then HoloLens. And all of these things were wrapped together, and it's just going to be one binary. So things are improving on that side. And there's also some other weirdness that I don't even know if I should go into, but they are allowing Java developers now to start writing applications that they can package into their format, which is called AppX. And so they package those into an AppX package, and those are going to be able to be distributed as well as Objective-C. So they're actually trying, the app gap is what Microsoft's been facing for some time now. So they're trying a couple of different approaches there. Then we have cross-platform native apps. These are the apps that I'm starting to become the most passionate about. And I have a few NativeScript stickers still up here if you want to check those out. So in NativeScript, you're basically going to be writing in this one language. So NativeScript, we'll go into that, what that uses, and then Xamarin, which is basically C#. And this is going to hit your three biggies: your Windows Phone, your iOS, and your Android. So NativeScript, you've seen so much about it in the keynote. You've seen Sebastian, who's been talking about it. You've seen TJ, who's been talking about it. I mean, everybody's been talking about it. So you can go to nativescript.org and check it out. So these are apps that are completely with JavaScript. But one thing that I talked to a gentleman before this was, hey, no Visual Studio support. Actually, it does support Visual Studio. It just wasn't shown yet. So I'm showing it to you. So in NativeScript, you can obviously, you can start doing these. We have a variety of templates that's available here. So you have NativeScript, Hello World, Master Detail, and again, the tabbed applications in both JavaScript and TypeScript that people want to use. And I'm finding more and more people want to use TypeScript. And thankfully, Microsoft is wanting to be working with us with NativeScript, as well as Angular is too. So I don't know, we've got kind of a conflict of interest there. So with the NativeScript, once you finally get to the native emulator, you can get to Android, and then you can get to iOS. Windows Phone, we've heard about that coming later. Right now, these are the two main things that you can target. So here you can actually deploy these to the native emulators. And then you also have Xamarin. And so with Xamarin, I'm just showing a couple of templates here. With Xamarin, you just have a mobile apps, and inside of the mobile apps, you have a blank app that's using Xamarin.forms.portable. And over here, it kind of gives you a little bit more explanation, because this is portable class library tools. And then you have a blank app where you use a shared project. Think of this as the shared project that we've seen in Windows Universal. And then there's just a class library. But most people I've noticed, they're kind of, they use that template, and I use that template, and I'm going to show you that template. But sometimes people want to only do a certain platform, but they want to reuse their C# skill set. So they may come in here and they may go to iOS and go to Universal, and they may start out with this master detail template. Another thing I thought that was amazing was having a metal game for people that want to write games. Because I'm telling you, I've published apps, I have many apps in the iOS App Store. Nothing makes money unless it's a game. You've got to have something cool. I even have an Apple Watch app, and yeah, nothing there. It's not a game. And it also supports SceneKit. But up here, you'll see that Xamarin already supports Apple Watch, and they were pretty fast to supporting Apple Watch. The same thing goes with Android. So here's the templates, and I'm going to go over all the templates, but the only thing to note here is, again, we have the Wear app. So Google Wear, so your Moto 360. So far from those first two slides that I showed, the first couple of slides that I showed you, that's all of those platforms. This amazed me the very first time that I started working with Xamarin. So I started using Android because I was on a Windows box, and with iOS, obviously, you still need Xcode, and you need to be on, you need a Mac in order for the build host and everything. So here is an Android application. I'm used to Eclipse or Android Studio, so I would have to grab, here I couldn't imagine, I can actually grab like a relative layout or, list views, and I can drag and drop those, and here's like, just a button. And so then, you look at the structure and, you start CS. And when it starts CS, it's a good thing. That's something I can do. That's something I can work with. All right, so let's take a look at Xamarin, and let's see how well we're doing here on time. So with Xamarin, I have a couple of demos. I'm going to see how much we can actually show you here. So I'm going to drop out of this, and we'll go to a Xamarin project, and I'm going to go to telerik.xamarin.forms, and once I'm here, let's see. Let's go. We've got right at 15 minutes. Okay, so let's do this. So going back to the templates, when I went into the file new project, I'm going to close out of my camera app, close the solution, and go new project. And we're going to go to Visual C#, and we're going to go to mobile apps, and we're just going to give it the default name here of app 7. Haven't you seen like those presentations where like the presenter had like app 200 or app 300? That's because they've done the same demo too many times. Thankfully this one only has 7, but that's only because I'm kind of lazy back at home when I'm trying out something. So here's the first message that you get is, connecting to the iOS build host. That's okay. We're good with that one for right now. And our project will begin spinning up. This is the boilerplate code that Xamarin produces kind of out of the box. So once this project loads, and I'll zoom in again in just a second, we're going to see that we have these 3 projects. So this is where we're going to do the majority of our work. So how many people here has heard of Xamarin.forms? Okay, yeah, 3 or 4. Okay, so Xamarin.forms is the way that Xamarin's kind of pushing people to start working with Xamarin. And it's great. I mean, there's obviously, pros and cons to everything, as I've been going through some of them. But the Xamarin Forms is, it's getting there. It's getting to the point to where I really want to start using it more. In their sample, though, unfortunately, they don't really show how to use it. So inside of this portable project, you see, the only thing is just this app.cs. And so all this is doing is it's saying, hey, okay, here's the main page. We're going to set the content page. We're going to create a new stack layout. We're going to drop in, some vertical options, center it. Basically, they just want the text centered. Then they're using a standard label that's going to be, it's going to be understood by all the different types of phones. And it's going to say, welcome to Xamarin Forms. And there's really nothing else here that's happening. So the on start, on sleep, on resume, nothing going on there. So if I switch to a WinPhone project, and I look at, if anybody here has developed in Windows Phone, they would probably expect inside of, the main page.xaml, for especially an app that's going to display something, that there would be something on the screen. So there's absolutely nothing in the main page.xaml. If we look at the code behind on this page, we'll see that the only thing that they have done here is this is just your boilerplate orientation code. This one's also comes with it as well, just xamarin.forms.init. And then there's a load application method that you can call, and you can pass in app7, which was the name of the application, and then app, which is located here, which is just the class. And when this application runs, if we go back to this one and we go ahead and set this as a startup project, and I go to my emulator and try to run it. Give it a second to finish building. That's okay. I'm going to scroll over. All that it actually shows, and I'll probably be able to show you while that's going crazy, probably be able to show you what that looks like on Android. So on Android, inside of the main activity, let's see here. Let's go to assets. Yeah, so when this launches, all that it actually shows is just simply it just simply shows that this hello world type of thing. So I'm not going to waste too much time trying to get it running properly. But it just centers this hello world message, even though it says welcome to Xamarin Forms, I still call it hello world. It centers this inside of your screen. So our Windows Phone emulator looks like it's dead, which isn't a surprise. So I'm going to go to Task Manager, and we will go ahead and close that out. I'm going to end the task, and I'm going to close it, and then we'll switch over to another project. So this is a project that I created, this a tiny bit more in depth, but it actually uses Xamarin Forms in the way that I feel that it was kind of meant to be used. And that was by using one main page.xaml file across all of the different types of platforms. So since we've already had a crash there on the Windows Phone, what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch it again, and then we'll just talk through some code and see if it works this time. All right, so let's look at the Telerik Xamarin Forms.portable. So one of the first things I started working with was the chart. And so when I was working with the chart, I obviously needed to build out the chart and kind of learn more about it. And so I created a view model. Inside of this view model, it's pretty much boring here because the only thing I have is some categorical data, and then I have a chart view model. So this is just going to populate some data onto the form for us. And then I have a chart. This is just a simple chart, and this chart, the only thing that I'm really going to call out here is going to be the chart series, where it's going to be binding to categorical data. And you can see up here that I went ahead and added things like added our view models, and I've added Telerik chart, where I can start referencing the Telerik chart here. And then in the code behind, I actually reference, I bind that data. And then we have property name, value, and then another one here called category. So I go over to the main page.xaml.cs, and I can see, okay, we've already got some standard boilerplate code again. This is for like a background color. So this is going to determine which color of the background we want to switch to whatever. So if you're on Windows Phone, you're on Android, you're on iOS, we're going to style this according to your application. You can also, instead of actually declaring all of this in XAML, which is something that some people do or may not want to do, you can also just write the code, which I did here. You can just write the code completely in C#, and you don't have to use XAML, even though that's kind of the preferred method. So before we show that, that's okay. Before we show that, let's go and see how this is actually wired up in our Telerik.XamarinForms.WinPhone project. So again, I have a main page, but the main page is completely empty. Nothing there. But if I look at my main page.xaml.cs, you'll notice that I've changed things. Before, again, we were declaring the name of the project, and this one was just Telerik Xamarin Forms. And now I have out, and then get main page, and then I'm going to convert page to UI element, because everything in the XAML world has to be in this UI element type of thing. So once you do that, I'm just passing in this and this application. If we come back over here, use some touch capabilities. This out very quickly. Yeah, I got a trial. I need to purchase that. So this application, this is a very simple chart, but I was able to build this chart here. Since I know the Android emulator kind of takes forever to launch, what I did was I went ahead and just took a screenshot of the Android emulator. So here this is, and I can go to view, and I can go to full screen. Here's that same one in Android, and obviously this would work in iOS as well. There's a couple of things that obviously you'll have to pay attention to inside of each one of these projects. So when you start looking back through this, and I have the code that's available, like the main activity.xaml, you'll see we have some assembly references here, and then you can see it's slightly different here for Android. It's set page app.get main page. So you'll notice there's just a few differences here, and then the other one is for iOS, there's an app delegate. And from here, I did have to set up a few extra lines of code to render that chart, but eventually iOS works with MDC, the MDC pattern, so you have to use view controllers and things like that. So I was able to get that to work with just an app.get main page and then create view controller. Okay, so we have like 5 minutes left, and then we'll just go ahead and I'll stop at this point. All right, so we went through a lot of material here today, and one of the things I wanted to show you here was this finished wrap-up slide. So this comes down to a couple of different things. When you're building these applications, we went through a whirlwind of various technologies, and I did that on purpose because I want you to be able to see here's a variety of options. Responsive web design, I'm not seeing a lot of people use that, but I am seeing the hybrid, I'm seeing Xamarin, I'm seeing native script, I'm seeing a couple of these other things being used. So it's what's best for your team. You've got to choose the technology that's best for your team. Again, stored discoverability is the big one, so that's I think why everybody's moving to the hybrid solutions and the native solutions. And when you write your application, look at some of these options before you move on. And so while I've got 3 minutes left here, I'm going to go ahead and show this slide that they asked me to show you. And this is tonight we have this attendee appreciation party that's at the Boston Museum of Science. So make sure, you take a picture or whatever of this if you haven't seen it yet. There's going to be shuttles taking you there and shuttles taking you back. Just make sure you wear your badge. And so I've come to Boston quite a bit, but I have never actually been to the Boston Museum of Science. So I will be loving it up there. So it's going to be very cool for all of the geeks in the room. All right, so I'll tell you what. So let's finish up. The last thing is just this slide. So I have put just these 2 samples on GitHub, but most people explore my GitHub repo because I build a variety of different things. So really, if you just go to GitHub MB Crump, you can see all kinds of random projects that I work and I build on that I've been building over the last time. And then the last thing is the session survey. So if you liked my talk, give me good feedback, but if you hated this talk, then just find another speaker and then just put in bad, bad, bad. But anyway, there's my session survey. And anyway, now I'm going to open up the floor for some questions and answers, which is usually the good part. So do we have any questions, or are you going to come up at the very, very end like we normally get? Come on, anybody brave? Nobody brave?